Hi, I'm Quence, and welcome to another of my series of reviews for Season 2 of the Playdate, Panic's handheld gaming console. Each week, 2 brand new games from different developers appear like magic on your Playdate system. Before getting into this week's games, I do really quickly want to give a shout out to last week's game, Fulcrum Defender, because they came out with an update real quick for that one that added some new difficulty modes and also tweaked the normal mode of the game to make it a little more challenging and theoretically stopped the game from crashing so much when you play and get too far into the level. These updates pretty much addressed all of my criticisms with the game from last week, so I really need to give props to the developers for this one. There's almost nothing to complain about anymore in Fulcrum Defender, so there you go. Just goes to show you the good old devs over at the Playdate teams working hard on these things, listening to feedback, monitoring them as they go. You'll love to see it. Okay, but now let's talk about the new stuff. Week 2's games are Wheelsprung and The Whiteout. Wow. Let's get into gear with Wheelsprung, a tough-as-nails physics game filled with platforming challenges developed by Nino Van Hoof and Julie Bjornskov. In this game, you play as a squirrel who wants to collect nuts. And obviously, the most straightforward way to do that is to get on your motorcycle and ride through a few dozen obstacle courses where said nuts are strewn about. Now, you're probably assuming that this game does something wacky with the crank, like you have to crank it to turn the wheels of your bike, or it's your handlebars or something. But no, this is an entirely button-controlled game. You hold A to accelerate, and you adjust the position of your bike by moving left and right on the D-pad. You can also press B to brake and down to reverse your orientation. Your goal is to collect enough nuts to make the trophy appear, which you can then collect to beat the level. It's probably for the best that this game forgoes crankage in favor of button presses, because I think it would just make things needlessly complicated otherwise. You see, Wheelsprung is complicated enough as it is. It sounds simple on paper. Press A, move bike. How hard could that be? But friends, this is a wacky kind of a bike. In order to operate it successfully, you need to constantly be balancing yourself back and forth because your character is quite wobbly. And anytime you hit your head on an obstacle, you get an immediate game over. Same goes for if one of your wheels hits a spike or some other hazard in your way. It can be very sensitive. Just the slightest bit of movement will send you out of whack, so you really have to make sure you are keeping yourself balanced properly. However, I pretty quickly picked up on the ins and outs of how to move effectively. It's not just designed to be annoying and difficult to control out of spite. There is a control method here that you can master, and once you have that nailed down, the game goes pretty smoothly. Okay, I'm gonna pause right here and clarify, just because I got used to the controls doesn't mean that I got good at the game. I think it's important for me to say that now because you're currently watching footage of me dying over and over again. The point I'm trying to make is that before too long, you're no longer fighting against the controls in Wheelsprung. Instead, you're fighting against the level design, and I mean that in a good way. Each level ups the ante a little bit with a new type of ramp, or there's a trick or a maneuver you've got to successfully navigate. There aren't a ton of levels included, but this is an example of quality over quantity, as I don't think there are any real repeats of ideas. Each level gradually builds on what you've learned before, challenging you to use those skills in new, more advanced ways. Eventually, the game does up the wacky factor, introducing, for instance, changes in gravity that have you floating and flipping all over the map and trying to swap gravity at different points. It really is all about those physics and about you as the player wrapping your head around how they work in relation to your button presses and timing. No doubt there is a good amount of trial and error involved here, and you continually will be experimenting to figure out just the right amount of acceleration that you need, or just the exact right point for you to flip your bike around so you stop it in time and don't go flying over a cliff. Make no mistake though, this game is tough, and it can be even tougher if it takes you a little longer to get a handle on those controls. You could find yourself dying more often than not, which again, you can see happened to me. Fortunately, they seem to have anticipated this happening. You can enable a hint option, which gives you a unique hint for each level, giving you some direction as to how you might tackle it. And if you're really frustrated, you can simply skip to the next level, so you'll never be stuck trying something over and over and over again if you don't want to be. Wheelsprung really nails what I consider the most important function in a game like this, and that is the ability to restart a failed level as soon as humanly possible. Nothing kills your gaming momentum like dying and having to sit through a load screen or navigate back to a menu before you can try again. This game will have you back in the action before you can even finish cursing over your previous loss. And if you happen to get stuck without dying, you can easily flip your bike over and smash your own head into the floor to get things moving again. This is a technique I mastered very early on. The environments in the game are very simple, they're just lines and cartoony squiggles, and that is the perfect vehicle for this style of gameplay, which is quick, tough action, during which you need to be able to easily see and comprehend everything that's on the screen. If you beat a level, a special bonus acorn will appear for you to collect when you go back to it. So there's some of your replay value. And of course, you can go for a faster time and try to get one of the high scores on the online leaderboard. You can see most of my initial scores on these levels are not impressive. But look, at the time of recording, I'm number 52 on this tight squeeze level. Double digits, that's something to be proud of. If you're into really challenging platformers and you're okay with a bit of a learning curve, Wheelsprung is an impressive, well-designed game. They really got down that addictive quality of always making you want to go one more time, because you're sure that if you just turned a second earlier, you could beat that level. And if you do beat all the levels, you can even design your own with a level editor that you can download online. I have not tooled around with this at all, but it's pretty neat that the devs put that out there. As for what comes included with the game already, there's over 30 levels, lots of bite-sized fun, plus like I said, you can go back and try to do them again to get all the bonus challenges. I'd love to see them add levels to this game through future updates or DLC of some kind, but there's plenty to enjoy just in this initial package. Continuing the trend of giving us two very different genres of games this week, our other offering is The Whiteout. This one comes from Scenic Route Software, who have done a number of other Playdate games, including one called Generations, which is a puzzler that I had a great time with. The Whiteout is a puzzler in a different sense. It's a narrative adventure game with a structure and style vaguely reminiscent of Saturday Edition, which was one of my favorite Playdate games from Season 1. The Whiteout takes place in a post-apocalypse, wherein the entire world has gotten stuck in a state of perpetual winter, society's collapsed, people are struggling to survive, you know, all that sort of thing. If you're a fan of The Last of Us or The Walking Dead, you'll be right at home here, although there are no zombies, it's just the collapse of society's stuff. You'll discover what the state of the world is gradually as you play, as the game feeds that exposition to you slowly and naturally, which is my preferred method of ingesting exposition. The atmosphere in this game is the main event. They actually recommend that you play with headphones so you can really immerse yourself in the sounds of the snowfall and blustering winds, not through the Playdate's tinny little speaker. For the record though, I thought the tinny little speaker did do the job well enough. This world is desolate, isolating, and harsh, and you really feel that as you trudge slowly from place to place. By default, your character moves slowly, allowing you time to take in the surroundings, but a very quickly released update did add a faster walking option. Pretty cool that the devs were able to push that out so soon after release, and it is an appreciated feature when you need to backtrack. As you explore the world, you'll find items which can be added to your inventory, and at various points you'll need to figure out which items to use to get past puzzles and progress the story. Like Saturday Edition, none of these puzzles get too complicated or difficult. That's because in any given section of the game, there aren't very many places you can actually visit. You can get through most of the game pretty easily just by making sure you check every point of interest you come across. Eventually, you're going to find the item you need, and then you can just cycle through your inventory until you trigger the correct item in the correct spot. Most of the solutions are pretty common sense. In order to add a little more variety and challenge to the proceedings, The Whiteout does also have some puzzles which require timing on the player's part, and there are also some that take advantage of the Playdate's unique features. A couple of these more outside-the-box puzzles did stump me for a bit. They are a clever way to break up the more commonly encountered puzzle types, and I wish there were more of them. In many adventure games, however, puzzles are only as good as the narrative, and I'm sorry to say that I did find The Whiteout a bit lacking in that regard. At first, I was really loving this game. Like I said, the atmosphere is terrific. I'm a sucker for adventure games. I was excited to explore more of this post-apocalyptic world, figure out what happened, figure out what's going on in it now. This is a story-heavy game, so I'm not going to go into great detail discussing the plot, but I felt like it needed more time in the oven. It's pretty short, and I can cut them some slack for that because that's just generally the nature of these Playdate games. I'm not expecting a 10 to 20 hour epic or anything like that because I'm sure the budget on this game was not huge, but even taking the game on its own terms, the story felt rushed to me. There are some pretty big developments that happen around halfway through, and I didn't feel like I had enough time to process those, nor did I feel that all of the characters were properly introduced or wrapped up by the end. The writing and dialogue range from pretty good to just fine, but nothing to write home about in my opinion, which is a problem when your game relies on the story so heavily. I absolutely love this genre on the Playdate. Something about this system just seems to really lend itself to these kinds of adventure games. It's kind of scary, but kind of cozy at the same time. It looks good, it plays good. I'm pretty enthusiastic about it, except I just think that the second half of the game drops the ball on the story, and I feel like it really needed maybe another hour or so of gameplay to make me care more about what happened. I'm also ready for more challenging puzzles in these types of games and slightly less linearity. However, I also do need to give the game props for including some nice quality of life features, like a record of all of the text you encounter, and some helpful goal reminders in case you take a break from playing for a bit. Here's hoping there's a Whiteout sequel or spiritual successor of some kind planned for the future. If you had asked me before playing these games, I would have assumed that The Whiteout would be far and away my favorite of the two. It's much more in my wheelhouse. I love these kinds of adventure games. And yet, I found that this week Wheelsprung was the one that really impressed me. It's definitely tricky to wrap your fingers around at first, but it's a really tight little game that feels very satisfying when you finally figure out how to pull off a lot of those maneuvers. The Whiteout didn't fully land for me in the end, but I still don't think it's a slouch. I still think this is another really strong week. I love that, again, these are two very different types of games. There's something for every kind of gamer to enjoy if you go into this, and I'm still really enthusiastic and optimistic about the next games coming up. Let me know in the comments what you thought about these two. Got any high scores to share in Wheelsprung? Are there any levels you had to skip or you just got completely stuck on? You designing your own levels? And how do you feel about The Whiteout? You have thoughts maybe in spoilers about specifics of the story? Do you agree or disagree with me? Talk to me down there. Like the video, subscribe, and stay tuned for more Playdate Season 2 reviews coming up on my channel very soon. Bye-bye.